We are delving in to a story that has many parents talking, has all this week, after complaints about babies getting blisters and reactions to banana boat sunscreen. Health Canada now investigating 3 complaints. These were the pictures that we showed you yesterday. 2 babies with second-degree burns on their faces. Their mothers say the burns and blisters developed after they applied banana boat sunscreen. Now, in a statement, this is a new one that came out just last night. Banana Boat says its products undergo rigorous testing to ensure safety and quality. It also says the sunscreen can't cause chemical burns and suggests an allergic reaction could be to blame. So this story, with this time of the year, of course, summer holiday fast approaching and parents understandably concerned about keeping children safe, we wanted to bring in an expert to get opinion and answer your questions. So good morning, Dr. Devendra Singh, who's a dermatologist at a Toronto clinic and here with all sorts of things to talk to us about.
Yes.
And already, even though it's only 6:40 Eastern, all sorts of questions from viewers to put to you. So thanks for coming in, number one.
My pleasure.
You were looking at those pictures and maybe we can look at them again. Obviously, you haven't seen these babies personally in your practice, but as you look at this, what do you take away from this blistering and this reaction?
Well, it's heartbreaking to see a poor child with a reaction like that. But it's it's a complicated thing because there's lots of factors at play here. And we all know that the sun alone can cause a sunburn.
Right.
But we also know that products alone can cause reactions. For example, if you were to put bleach on your skin, you know, you would develop a burn. And if you put poison ivy on your skin, you would develop an allergic reaction. It becomes even more messy when you have products plus the sun. Because sometimes you can get what's called a phototoxic reaction.
That's what they talk about, that it might be exacerbated by sun exposure.
Exactly. And an example of that is when people put lime juice on their skin and they go to the Caribbean, they can develop a blistering reaction like a burn.
Okay.
And then there's also some products that you can put on the skin that can develop an allergic type reaction. So we really have to figure this out before we jump to conclusions.
As they say.
But at least it's bringing awareness.
It certainly is, and hence our conversation today. Why don't we just start with children? How important is it to protect babies and children from the sun?
I think it's very important to protect them from the sun, but we have to keep in mind that sunscreen is not the most important way.
It's not?
No.
Well,
so when
hold on, because that's my very first question from our viewer, whose name is Bernard, wants to know what is the best sunscreen to use for kids?
So for children, I suggest that we use the physical blockers, which are more natural mineral sunscreens.
Okay.
And these include titanium dioxide and zinc oxide. And I think that that's safe. Now, it's recommended that we use them after 6 months of age, unless you have advice from a doctor. But I think it's okay under 6 months of age. But the reason I want to bring up this point is that it's more important that we also think about the behavior. So keep them out of the sun or in the shade or under an umbrella. And also think about clothing, like wearing a hat or clothing to protect them from the sun. And sunscreen is one of the 3 things, but probably not the most important.
Okay, so sunscreen, keep them out of the sun, and if they're in the sun, they should wear clothing. I was thinking of my little nieces when they were little girls. They wore the full, the bathing suits that covered all the sleeves. There are materials now that actually...
And those wide hats to help protect their faces. I think that's all very important.
So 3 key points. We don't want to really actually suggest any product here that's being better than the others, but those are the mechanisms to use for children. So when we take a look at sunscreens, if we're looking at some, you've got a whole variety here.
Right.
Ingredients. What do we look for, I guess, both to have included for sure, but maybe are there any ingredients that we want to avoid? I don't know.
Well, this is it. So when we think of sunscreens, we have to think of 2 big groups.
Okay.
There are the physical blockers that I mentioned, and those are the mineral type sunscreens. And then there are chemical blockers, which are the majority of these ones here. Now, most of the sunscreens on the market today are very good at blocking 2 things, ultraviolet A and ultraviolet B. But in the past, sunscreens were only blocking ultraviolet B. So you have to make sure that it says broad spectrum.
Okay.
Then you're going to get the ability to block both of those damaging rays.
Okay. So these are the chemical ones that we're looking at here. Do we have any of the mineral ones that you're talking about?
I didn't see
I've never
one.
used those before. So those would be considered the natural sunscreens?
People like to use the word natural.
Okay, but they're actually mineral, and then there's the physical
And the
blockers.
difference is that they basically reflect light. Okay? Whereas the chemical ones, they absorb the light and convert it into heat and then dissipate it. So they work a little bit differently.
All right. So when you're looking, and we've got a whole range here in terms of numbers.
Yeah.
The SPF, what does SPF stand for in case people think they know but maybe don't?
So SPF basically is the ratio of time it takes to burn in unprotected skin versus protected skin.
So sun protection factor, that's right?
Exactly.
Okay,
so let's say you would burn in 10 minutes in the sun if you're unprotected, and then you use an SPF 30. Technically, you wouldn't burn for 300 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, but there's a problem. SPF only measures protection against ultraviolet B, and I told you ultraviolet A is there, but it has nothing to do with that. And also, people never put on enough. So an SPF of 30 is always less than what you think.
Okay, well, we have to talk so much more.
Yeah.
But can I just ask about the number? Because
Sure.
what do you say is the minimum number that we should be looking for?
I think we have to use an SPF 30 or higher.
30 or
But
higher?
I often recommend 45 or 50 or
And
higher.
even that high, because I've heard anything above 30 is just a waste of time.
Well, that's a good question too, because the curve flattens as you get above 30. And when you can look at the percentage of the sun's rays, like UVB rays that are blocked, and an SPF of 100 will block 99%, and a 50 will block 98%.
Okay.
So there's not much difference, but people don't put on enough.
But make sure it's 30. Waterproof. Is waterproof sunscreen really waterproof?
Good question. And the answer is no.
No.
So we're not supposed to use terms like waterproof or sweatproof anymore. The only term we can use is water resistant.
Okay.
And when they test it, it can be up to 40 minutes or 80 minutes. So that should be on the label. But those old terms like waterproof, they're misleading, and they are gone now.
So if they say water resistant, so you have to reapply after either 40 or 80 minutes, depending on what it says. How thick a layer of sunscreen does a person have to apply?
So SPFs are tested in labs, and it's actually 2 milligrams per centimeter squared, which means nothing, but it's a hell of a lot.
Oh, okay.
One good way to remember it is to take this shot glass. One full shot glass, that much, should be what you use to cover your entire body. And
whole
most people
body.
do not put that much on.
No, that seems
And
like a
that's
lot.
the problem, and that's why SPFs are a bit misleading.
How much does different skin pigmentation matter in terms of sun protection?
So that's a good question, because a lot of people that have very dark skin, our black patients, they think they don't need sunscreen. But their SPF, if you have black skin, is only 13.4. And in white people, it's 3.4. And someone who's brown like me is somewhere in the middle. But we're talking about SPFs of 30 or higher, right? So our inherent skin color is not giving us enough. So it's important still that we use sunscreen.
So regardless of skin color, 30 minimum.
Yeah,
30
exactly.
minimum. Okay. Does going to a tanning bed for a base tan? We had a couple of questions about is there such a thing as a base tan or a tanning bed? Is that a real thing that gives you some protection?
That's a complete myth. And tanning beds are class 1 carcinogens, the same as cigarette smoke.
Stay away from
We
that.
stay away from tanning beds. We don't like those at all.
What about aerosols? Do we have any of those? There's one right there. This
Yeah.
is very popular because they're so easy to apply.
Well, this is it. They're easy to apply. And I think because of that, people don't apply enough. We know that people that use aerosols and sprays, they're not putting enough on. So we're always going to recommend creams or lotions.
Creams or lotions,
Yeah.
not aerosol.
Exactly.
Elen sent us a very good question. Elen wants to know, is a past due date sunscreen still effective?
So this is also a good question. And we know that, especially with chemical blockers, they can become unstable over time. And sometimes if they're in hot conditions, like people keep them in the car or in their bag, and yes, they can become unstable. So I think we should respect the expiry date. And if they are expired, we should definitely change them out and get unexpired products.
If you don't have anything else in the house, I suppose an expired sunscreen might be better than none.
I think so.
But race out and get one just as soon as you can either.
And we also say, like, if your sunscreen expires, you're not putting enough on.
Right.
Right? It has a 3-year expiry date and it expires. It means you're not using it.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
If you're using that much, that shot glass full every
should never
extra,
expire.
you're not running out. But now, we wanted to mention as well, because some other people were, the reason we have hats and umbrellas there, why do we have that as part of your display this morning?
Because it was 3 things. Number 1 is behavior, staying out of the sun around solar noon, seeking shade, stuff like that. Number 2 is also clothing. So wearing a hat, a wide-brimmed hat, using an umbrella, these are in long sleeve clothing.
Right.
These are all ways to protect yourself. And then the third part is sunscreen. So this is a reminder to do all of those things.
All of those 3 stages.
Yeah.
Had a question from Keith Nixon in Kemptville, wanting to know, when you use sunblock and sprays an insect repellent after applying sunblock, is there a negative impact on either product when they use them together?
So they haven't been tested completely together, but I believe that they're going to be safe. Sunscreen first, then the insect repellent after. They should both be safe and effective. And in some parts of the world, they're actually creating and marketing combination products.
Huh.
But yeah, so I think the testing has shown that that's a good thing to do.
Is coming.
Yeah.
Speaking of combination products, a question from Stephanie, because there are many makeup products, foundations, for example, that say they have SPF 15 in them, or maybe even higher, but for example, a foundation with SPF, is that enough protection in your view?
So this is what a lot of patients come to us doing. They're using a makeup with an SPF of 15, but the SPF of 15 is not usually good enough. It's not really a good enough sunscreen. I always prefer standalone products. And there are some sunscreens now that are tinted. And that's actually even better because it acts like a foundation, but it's a proper sunscreen with a tint. But I would prefer, in general, standalone products.
We are blasting through a record number of answers. This is outstanding. We had this question as well from a viewer who is a senior, and she bought a children's sunscreen.
Okay.
SPF 60, because she was thinking a baby's skin would be sensitive, and her skin as an aging woman is a little bit more sensitive.
Yeah.
Can an adult use a child's sunscreen safely, effectively?
Yeah, I don't think there should be much difference between adult and children's sunscreens. But if you have sensitive skin, I would think stick with the physical blockers, the minerals. And another trick that I should mention is, especially for a child in light of all of this that's happened, you could always do a little test spot on the forearm for a few days and make sure there's no reaction there before you go into the sun. At least you'll know then that it's not the product itself that's causing the reaction.
Right.
And that's a good idea.
That's a great idea. I have to let you go. Thank you to you for those extraordinary questions. We cover the whole range. And Dr. Singh, thank you to you for your answers as well. It's been very helpful as we sort out the confusion over this story. Just before you go, though, parting words, parting message in terms of the summer season and protecting yourself from the sun.
Well, I think sunscreen is an important thing. We should keep it by our toothpaste. We should put it on daily. Ultraviolet A comes through window glass, car glass, and clouds. People don't realize that. It should be part of our daily routine. And we need to get the message out.
Well, we've done that this morning with Dr. Devindra Singh. Pleasure to have you
Thank
with
you
us.
so much.
Thank you. And again, thanks for those questions.